Hey everyone, it's RemanX here, and I'm here to bring you a very, very important video to hopefully answer some of your questions. I get this a lot. And the first question is, why did you take as many characters as you did to G14? Well, it started back a couple of patches ago, and I decided after we made the first couple of runs of DD3 and finished them up, with the influx of new units that were being added to the game, I wanted to go back and do a third run and decide if any of these characters moved up the ranks and tiers and made it into my recommended category. So after a third run, I obviously waited for the symbiotes. I don't think I'm going to be doing another one because with DD4 on the horizon, I am going to be halting all of my progress to focus on obtaining some G15, which looking at the numbers is going to require a lot of superior gear that I just don't have. So hard pause for a little bit, and especially with ISO's introduction to the game, I really wanted to see if anything surprised me. And actually, you might be surprised. There are some characters that are good alternatives, good support characters, and others to consider as we go through here. So let's get right into it. So as you can see, I have Carnage, Mr. Sinister, Crystal, Colossus, Symbiote, Spider-Man, Black Bolt, Deadpool, Thanos. So the X-Force. The Marauders, the Symbiotes, a few key members of the Sinister Six, Hawkeye, and some of the Avengers, some of the BH 2.0, Squirrel Girl, Asgard, all except for Heimdall, Mordo, and like I said, key members of the Sinister Six here. Some additional global members like Killmonger, the Black Order, some of the members of the Young Avengers. They weren't used that much thing, and I can blame chat for that on Twitch. Remember, I stream every day on Twitch. You guys can catch me there, ruining my roster on a daily basis for the sake of science. Let's get into it. Some of these guys I used from the first run. You can see that Ultron was brought to G14, really to see if I can leverage him, Thor, and some others. Merc Riot Guard missed the boat, really will go into value on that. So we're going to get right into it. Obviously, you can see Taskmaster here for Global. And we're going to go over what we learned. So I finished my third run of DD3, and it wasn't surprising some of the characters that came up on top. Let's pull up the list here. So if you guys don't know, we've been updating the tier list, and one of the categories that we have been using to evaluate characters has been DD3. That will probably change going forward because the DD3 character, once we find out what the actual DD4 looks like, going over some of the cost and some of that, I have a feeling we're going to try to break that into a DD3 into DD4. So if a character isn't valuable in DD3, but is valuable in DD4, it might move up the chart. We'll have to go into that as they announce what the actual nodes will look like. We only got a hint of it from John Durr in the most recent Strike Time video, but what I am clear on is that most of the list did not change much. Ebony Maw, Carnage, Symbiote, Spider-Man, Phoenix, Hala, Minerva are still on top of that list. However, so how we evaluated these were 10s were characters that had a significant impact, were allowing you to get through the content at a very high level, and were able to, if you just brought some of those characters in there. Now, the other thing was we brought a 9 was specifically for characters that were a good alternative, like if you could bring them in as a second character for global, or a second or third character besides the one that were mentioned. They graded so high that they were worth consideration. So if you notice here, Proxima actually was surprisingly good through all the modes. She does with her offense down. She often was able to work in great synergy with some other characters. Proxima has been a surprise on this list from the moment she's been released. One of my favorite characters for her utility in the game. And then we're going to go with Colossus. So the reason why Colossus is there, and I want you guys to take into consideration that Colossus does allow Phoenix to get more of her ults off. He protects her. He does allow her to get deflex if he throws up the taunt. But the most important part of that is he probably is a better preference. Now, Sinister and Emma Frost both moved, Sinister actually moved down a little bit, and Emma moved up. They're good in that they both provide utility that you're not getting from Colossus, but realistically, if you're going to bring two global characters at this point, it should probably be Colossus and Phoenix. So if they're a higher number like Eats, they are worthy of consideration for a second run. But realistically, they're not bad. One thing I will tell you is after your first run, you need to evaluate your rewards. You need to go through and I'm telling you, take screenshots. If I give you one piece of advice, take screenshots of all your rewards. Try to figure out how many characters you can bring up, because if you can bring up all of the Black Order, they will do some work for you later on in other environments. If you can bring up, you obviously want to focus on balancing out the power. If you can bring up, because like I said, Black Order, believe it or not, actually we were able to do a full team, pretty much auto, the last two nodes of Cosmic without much difficulty. And Ebony Maw obviously is a staple. So that being said, Doc Ock actually as a tech character is probably just behind Minerva as something worth consideration. He did some amazing work, and we were able to do the last node on auto, no targeting. When AFK came back, and Anti-Venom and Mysterio with Doc Ock, Carnage, and Symbiote Spider-Man had sold a node, and then we canceled it out, and we did it again with Electro, who is also moved up a little bit on this list, and we're surprised at the fact. So remember, this list isn't cut and dry. The top characters here are the ones that we recommend building first, and then the 9s are support characters. You want to start with the global versions of them, so Colossus and then support, because of what they can do, and then you move on down the list as far as recommended characters. Now again, you have high red stars, you have a character that performs well. So we're going to go into some of the ones that I think I thought were surprising. So Shuri dropped a little bit down. Punisher was something that he wound up being more of a stat stick at the last two nodes of City, because he basically was dying and he was still giving the bonuses to Symbiote Spider-Man. So something to consider there, the bonus damage. And then again, the throughput from the heals is actually important there. Strife was actually a decent tank, and he was, if you prepared him up with Mr. Sinister, he was throwing energy around, allowed you to do more clones. He was able to take quite a few hits, but again, that is something that's going to be relatively star dependent. So he kind of fell off on there. Ultron, now, see, we have Ultron as a 7 here because he really is kind of a utility character. And what that means is you're going to have to build a team to keep him alive. One of the problems with is, even though he got a little bit more health and a little sturdier through ISO, he is still falling behind in that. But I will tell you right now, I have a new appreciation for Ultron I didn't have before. He does make certain nodes a lot easier, and especially if you can get the bots out on the table, get them all summoned, and start controlling the field with both the rewind skills and being able to pluck off buffs. Something to consider. Taskmaster, it was interesting. Taskmaster is up here as a 7, and it's mostly because it takes a while to get him wound up. And because he's unfarmable, most of us probably don't have him at high stars and high red stars. So it's something to remember that if it's a 7 on the list, you have to evaluate it as overall power level. He just didn't do enough for me, but for some of the other folks who had brought him in there, he was good on their second run. But they do have a little more invested in him. Remember, his blinds and his stuns on multiple control will help get you through some nodes. But this is if you guys want to go ahead and reset it. Remember, I actually went through on this third run, and I think I placed in quite a few of the leaderboards. Again, something unique on that. I think node 3, I use Proxima and Symbiote Spider-Man to do a control, complete and control. So as you guys can see over here, obviously Scream is probably one of the worst ranked of the symbiotes, right behind Venom here. Electro, while a 5, was good support. The problem is bio, so we really couldn't rank them high if they were bio characters. So Hawkeye is actually surprisingly good, and if you guys made the big brain play and brought Yo-Yo, believe it or not, there are some teams, especially featuring Nick Fury and Hawkeye, that can do some amazing things, but I don't think you should build a team around them, because obviously the power of Phoenix is just so hard to counter, and more importantly, the design team still doesn't know how to this day, hence why they've introduced the legendary tag. Right? Right. So, so you can see that some other characters like Sif or some of the support, she actually is a decent tank, especially if you want to bring up all the Asgardians. I know a lot of earlier players, because of the Asgardians they just have fallen off in so many of the other game modes that I don't recommend it. And then you can see quite a bit of the drop off. I just found that X-23, so a lot of people are going to say, but what about X-23? Well, the problem you have is with Phoenix being so powerful and her life drain skill, while I think she adds a ton of utility, she just wasn't getting it triggered unless you planned on it. So remember, the life drains don't trigger the HP threshold skills like the life drain or Black Bolt's passive. So things like that aren't being taken. So those are something to take into account when we chose this. So you guys can follow the tier list over here. Remember, guys, this is kind of an all-in-one tier list. It kind of gives you insight. Remember, we do rate the raids at about U7.3. We may change that if we start seeing people want to start pushing different content now that their rosters are ISO builds. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the ISO builds that have changed teams as we go through more of the team ISO builds. So guys, thanks for tuning in. Remember, I do things so you don't have to. I'm done doing any more G14s, I promise. Unless you guys really find one that you guys think that I need to do. Probably the PIM team, because, you know, but I won't take it back into DD3 unless you guys think I need to test them out. But I really don't think I'm gonna. Yeah, I'm probably gonna. We'll take a look and make sure you guys tune in. You guys see the mad dad tutorial that is every day on Twitch. Love you guys very much. Thanks for tuning in.